Welcome to the Cambridge Financial Podcast with Bert Salazar, CEO at Cambridge Financial Partners, LLC. This podcast is all about tax-preferred retirement planning, economics, financial risk management, and achieving a risk-free and successful financial life. Now, your host, Bert Salazar. Bert Salazar. Bert Salazar.
Hey, good day, everyone. Welcome to another podcast of the Bert Salazar Retirement Show. My name is Bert Salazar, and I'm always here with you, giving you information and education regarding all areas of financial services and planning and retirement, and obviously tax planning as well. So this is episode 159, so we've been doing this for quite some time now. And the title of this episode is I Told You So. And the reason for that is some of the issues that I'm going to cover today go back to some of the topics that I have been discussing with all of you since right before the 2020 election. And many of those issues that I have brought to the table and that I have brought to the table back then are kind of flourishing right now, but not in a good way. So we'll have to tackle those as they come in the next few minutes. First, I want to give you good news. My wife and I decided to move out of the United States, and now we're living in Madrid, Spain. And, you know, we've been here now for a couple of weeks. And we have a permanent visa to live here. Obviously, we continue to run our businesses, but we're now living in Spain as an expat. And obviously the benefits of technology in a virtual world are excellent, because I have not skipped a beat whatsoever. I continue to manage my clients. I continue to hold my webinars and my seminars, and also my podcasts that I do on an ongoing basis with each and every one of you. And by the same token, I continue to communicate with many of my clients. The only thing I've had to do is change the hours, because, you know, compared to the East Coast time, I'm 6 hours ahead. So I start working sometime around 2 p.m. in the afternoon, which makes it very easy for many of my clients in the U.S. And if you happen to be a client of mine living in California, then I'm able to stretch it out a little bit in order for us to have reviews and conference calls and, you know, make investment decisions and insurance decisions and tax planning decisions as well. So we're excited. We're going to be here for a while. We got to be back in the States in late September, because my youngest daughter is getting married. So we're excited about that, and then we'll be back to Madrid at the end of October. So living in Madrid, obviously having the ability to speak Spanish fluently, as my wife and I do, is a major plus. But this is an incredible city. You know, people are always having fun. People are always sitting in restaurants, and they're sitting outside and then drinking wine. They're drinking beer. They're eating. They're talking. They're communicating. A lot more than we do in the U.S. So that's something interesting that, you know, we're kind of getting used to at this point in time. Although we've been coming to Spain now for a number of years, so we know the way they do things and so forth. But we're excited. It's a new world, and, you know, if we don't like it in a year or two, we always go back to the U.S. It's great to be an American citizen living abroad, because you have capabilities that most Spaniards do not get to enjoy. So let's get on with today's show. And as I said, the title for the show is I Told You So. And I told you so in many different ways. And, you know, first thing I want to share with all of you is that, you know, we're being led by imbeciles. The people that run this country, and it doesn't matter whether you happen to be a Republican, a Democrat, or an independent. Most of them are imbeciles, regardless of, you know, how you feel about the political views in the United States and so forth. But we are being led by imbeciles. As a matter of fact, a while back, I did a similar podcast in which the title of the podcast was "We're being run and led by imbeciles," and there are many reasons for that. Now, obviously, elections have consequences, and many of you may have voted for Biden. Many of you may have voted for former President Trump. But at the end of the day, a lot of the stuff that was happening back then and a lot of the information that these politicians were putting out, especially on the Democratic side of the House and what they intended to do if they were able to control, the presidency, and obviously they already control the House, and they came very close to controlling the Senate, although on a 50-50 vote, they do have control of the Senate because of the vice president vote. But a lot of things that they were talking about increasing taxes and spending an enormous amount of money on in the U.S. on infrastructure, on COVID-19 and so forth, it was nothing more, nothing less than a hurricane coming down the pike and not having the ability to do anything about it from a business perspective. So one of the things that I've tried to do over the last 6-7 months, even before the election, was kind of gear each and every one of you and bring some of the issues that we all need to pay attention to, because at the end of the day, if you're being led by an imbecile or imbeciles, then you have to take your finances under your own control, and you have to be able to do whatever it is that you need to do in order to minimize all of those stupid mistakes that these politicians are going to be making, whether you happen to be on one side of the ledger or the other. Now, one of the things that interesting I just read this past week is that Senate Democrats revealed a $3.5 trillion budget and social spending program. Now, because I intend to do this under a budget and reconciliation program, more than likely this will be a non-partisan vote. So that means that no Republican is going to vote for it, but all the Democrats are going to vote in favor of this tremendous increase of a $3.5 trillion on top of the additional $1 trillion, on top of the other $2 trillion, on top of the other $3 trillion from before. So we're just throwing money around that we don't have in order to mitigate. And this is going to be for social spending, including infrastructure. Now, the definition of infrastructure has been extended tremendously. What infrastructure used to be back in the day, construction of highways and railroadways, and obviously managing the transit system and so forth, now gets expanded to all kinds of different things that, a lot of these liberal politicians and imbeciles, they're calling that as a social infrastructure from a business perspective. Now, back to the basics. Inflation is currently at 5.4%. It hasn't been this high in a couple of decades. And although Democrats claim it's a short-term issue, it is not. It's a never-ending economic challenge that all of us are going to have to face, because of the fact that the more money the U.S. government prints, the less value the dollars that you have in your bank have. So that means that your salary is being depreciated by inflation, your savings, your CDs, your investment accounts, everything that you have in control today is being totally devalued and depreciated because of the increase in inflation in the United States. Now, one of the first decisions that the Biden administration did, or in this case President Joe Biden, was that the oil pipeline was closed on his first day in office. Now, 8 months later, we're now asking the Middle East to produce more oil for us. Now, remember, we used to be oil independent in this country, but now we depend on other countries for our oil. So what does that mean? Well, we've lost a tremendous amount of leverage, and that's why you see gas prices where they're at today, and they are continuing to rise, and they will continue to rise at least for the unforeseeable future And that's something that all of you need to pay attention to, because at the end of the day, when you take a look at that 5.4%, it's more than likely higher than that, because that inflation number does not include energy and gas prices. So when you factor those in, and obviously it may not, it includes only a few items in the food items, but it doesn't include them all. So at the end of the day, we're looking at anywhere between a 6 and a 7% inflation as it is today. The other major issue with inflation is that inflation is not tax deductible. It's not that you can file your taxes at the end of the year and say, look, I had a 5.4 or 6.4 or 7.4 personal inflation rate, so I'm going to take this off the table. I'm going to deduct it off my taxes and not pay Uncle Sam. Well, it doesn't work that way. So inflation is not tax deductible. So if we leave it at the 5.4%, which is a number that the government reported last week, to that you have to add your personal taxes. So you have to add, if you happen to be in the 20, 25, 30% tax, you have to add that on. So that way, after you pay taxes, you would net 5.4% in order to stay ahead of inflation. And I would argue that the majority of us and the majority of you listening to my podcast are not able to break even because of the enormous amount of inflation that we're starting to see in the United States. Now, another thing that is important for all of us, and we hear this, and I heard this back during the election cycle, President Joe Biden, I'm actually talking about him today more than Trump, because Trump is no longer in power. So, obviously the ball is in his court, and he's making some major economic mistakes that I knew they were coming down the pike, but it was something that, most Americans have decided to vote for him. They did so, and now, they voted for him. Now you got to be able to sit back and pay the price and feel good about yourself. But according to the IRS, anyone with an AGI, that would be an adjustable gross income of $43,614, is considered to be in the top 50% of all taxpayers. Now, let me repeat that, because that's very important. According to the IRS, anyone with an AGI of $43,614 is in the top 50% of all taxpayers. Now, bear in mind, guys and gals, that the top 50% of taxpayers pay 97.1% of all taxes in these United States. So what I'm saying to you right now is that, that conversation that we used to hear, and the topics that we used to hear from President Biden, and the many speeches that he was going to raise taxes to the very wealthy, but not anyone that would make less than $200,000. Well, that's going down the pike, and that's going right down the pipe as a major financial catastrophe and a major lie, because at the end of the day, $43,614 doesn't make you a very healthy individual, and you're already paid 97.1% of all the taxes in this country. So the new tax plan calls for an increase in the capital gains tax to 40%. From the current, it's actually 0, then 15, then 20, and then for certain items goes up to 25%. But the average American pays capital gains taxes somewhere between 0 and 15%. Well, guess what? Now it's going to go to 40%. Now, what do you think that's going to do? Remember, you pay capital gains taxes when you have capital gains. And you have capital gains when you have placed your money at risk. You buy a business, or you open a business, or you buy a stock, or you invest into a mutual fund. And the reason why you do that is because you want to grow. You want to grow your assets. You want to grow your retirement assets along the way. You want to help the community. You want to open a business. You want to create a family legacy and so forth. But the IRS would have given you a tax break by giving you a lower tax for capital gains rate, because your money was at risk. Well, I guess it's not going to matter anymore once it passes, because whether your money is at risk or not, now capital gains taxes are going to go up to 40%. Now there's more that we need to see along those lines, but that's a new guideline that they have put out. Now, the other thing is, and this is why I go back to what the IRS said about anyone with an AGI of, $43,614, is that, all the other tax brackets are going to be increasing as well, not just those making over $200,000. So, for those of you that thought that you were home safe because of the fact that you were not going to have to pay the additional tax because it would only be taxed at the 200,000 and up income brackets, forget about that, because there are not enough of them to be able to pay for all the debt that now we're encountering in this country and that we have been encountering for the last 2 decades. So these are things that you got to be ready for. And these are things that I have been talking about now for many months. I would argue probably closer to a year. So I told you so. I told you these things were going to happen. So obviously, as of January 20th of this year, everything is costing more. And that's what I call taxation without representation, because at the end of the day, you have no representation, because these politicians, again, Republicans and Democrats, are going to do what they're going to do, and they don't care about anyone. They just care about themselves and their pockets and maintaining power at whatever rate they think it costs. I think one of the major challenges that we have in America is that most Americans don't think outside of the box. Most Americans, and I would argue many of you listening to this podcast probably fit that profile, hopefully not. But most Americans look at their finances through a microscope as opposed to a telescope, and they're not fighting for themselves. They're just going along. They're being puppets in a world that is full of puppeteers. And guess who the puppeteers are? Well, they are the people that we elect to the presidency and to the Congress of this country that are dictating laws that make no financial sense whatsoever. I don't care how unintelligent you may be. I don't care how uneducated you may be. If you have just a little bit of common sense, although common sense is by far the least common of all senses, you would identify that all of these things that are happening today, and that these politicians and the laws that they're passing, do not have a financial, economic, or social benefit to you as an American citizen living in the United States. And to make things even worse, within the past 2 weeks of withdrawing from Afghanistan, the Taliban terrorists have taken over the country. And we will find ourselves at war once again in the very near future. And, the sad thing is so many lives lost for nothing, so many injured military troops in the last 20 years in Afghanistan. I know President Biden over the last 3 weeks have been saying that there's no way that the Taliban was going to take over, that, everything was down to a science and so forth. Well, within 2 weeks, the Taliban now are in Kabul, I say pronounce it, and now they run the country. And guess what? They're all terrorists. And what do you think they're going to be doing? They're going to be planning terrorist attacks against the United States, not only throughout the world, but here in the homeland. So within the next few years, we're going to find ourselves back at it again in another war that could have been prevented if things would have been done correctly. So I'm just giving you a lot of feedback as to all the crap that I'm seeing. Obviously, the national debt, the national deficit, the unfunded liabilities are going to be very close to levels that are they're already unprecedented to speak of. But at the end of the day, they're going to be at such high levels that unless we print money, the United States of America is going to be fully bankrupt. So now that I've given you all this great news, what can we do to save ourselves? What can you do to save yourself, to save your family, to save your retirement, to save your independence as an American? What can you do today? Well, you can start by investing in tax-free benefit products. And what are those? Well, I've talked about them 1,000 times. But sometimes, the simplicity makes the world complex. And simplicity is something that is very important, because if you keep life simple, you will be able to find the road to success at some point in time in the future. So what are some of these tax-free investment products? Roth IRAs, obviously Roth 401ks, municipal bonds, and 7702 plans. Now, I always caution my clients, if they're going to be investing in municipal bonds, to make certain that they do it up to a certain level, because municipal bonds do have a negative impact on the taxation of Social Security benefits and the increase in Medicare premiums, so you have to be careful on those lines. But Roth IRAs, Roth 401ks, municipal bonds, they're all very good. And last but not least would be 7702 plans, which are cash value life insurance plans that you can put as much money as you want. If you do it the right way, if you do the type of plan that I do for many of my clients, most of the funding is going to go toward the increase of the cash accounts inside of the 7702 plan. And it's still going to have a guaranteed death benefit and a guaranteed long-term care benefit that none of the other plans are able to provide for you on a tax-preferred basis. So you got to start thinking that if you think taxes are high today, wait until tomorrow. And if not, wait until the next day. Or if not, wait till next year or 2 years or 3 years from now. Taxes are going to go through the roof because somebody's going to have to pay for this nightmare. Another thing that I've been, talking a little bit about this, and I'm not, making any predictions, or I'm not giving any type of financial advice, is that it would be important to start diversifying. And I don't care how old you are. I don't care if you're 20 years of age, 50 years of age, or 80 years of age. I think it would be important to invest a little bit of your money in cryptocurrencies as a hedge, not only against inflation, but most important, as a hedge against governmental mismanagement. And that's where I've been putting a lot of my money now, in Bitcoin and Ethereum, in BNB, in ADA, because cryptocurrencies are not controlled by any government. They can never be controlled by the government. And it's a great way for you to be able to diversify your income risk and your retirement risk by investing a portion of your retirement in cryptocurrencies. Now, there's a lot of volatility in crypto, so it's important to note, because remember, crypto is a brand new world. And this is a future world of currency, not only in the United States, but also throughout the entire globe. So it's here to stay. It's not going to go away. So either you embrace it or you fear it. If you're going to fear it, then chances are you're not going to be very successful. If you embrace it and you get to understand it, any of you that may want some good articles, feel free to send me an email. I'll be more than happy to send those to you. Again, this is not financial advice, but this is something that I'm doing personally with my assets. And I'm already 65 years of age. So can you imagine if I would have been 30, 35, 40, 45? I would put just about every dollar that I have into this new crypto world, is what I call cryptonomics, because it's going to govern everything that we do. Some of the major companies in the U.S. are now heavily involved in crypto. Through crypto, you have Visa, you have MasterCard, you have American Express, you have major corporations that are putting a lot of money in crypto because they see it coming. It's a great way for you to maximize the internal rate of return on your assets, but then again, you cannot have all your eggs in one basket, so you need to be able to diversify. Now, as always, please don't forget to pick up my book, Retirement Paradigms, Managing Retirement Risk in the 21st Century. You can pick it up on Amazon, and you can either download it or you can buy the hard copy. But, a lot of the issues and a lot of the answers to your questions you're going to find in that book, which is very important, and it's a great way to, I'm in the process of writing another book now, so I'll keep you abreast of that. It should be done sometime in early 2022, because I'm still gathering a lot of the information. So pick up my book. I think it'll be something that you'll be very pleased with, and you're going to pick up a lot of information, and most important, education, because at the end of the day, information without education always leads to failure. Now, for those of you that may want to reach out, please feel free to call me at area code 766-1042. Nothing has changed on my end, although I'm in Madrid, Spain. You can also send me an email at Bert, B-E-R-T, at bertsalazar.com, BERTSALAZAR.com. And always remember that my goal for you and for your family is to kind of help you change the way that you see things, because when you start to change the way that you see things, the things that you see change. So once again, thank you so much for giving me a few minutes of your time. I'll talk to you again very soon. Take care. Have a great day. Bye-bye.